Welcome to our deep dive into this fascinating world of phytoplankton.
Yes.
These microscopic organisms. I mean, you can't even see them with the naked eye, but they play such a huge role in keeping our planet alive, and us alive too.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be looking at a bunch of different research and visuals, all really pointing to the same incredible fact that these tiny creatures are essential for fighting climate change and keeping our oceans healthy.
It's really mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like there's this hidden forest, and it's even bigger than the Amazon.
Right.
And it's teeming with life right under the waves, and we just don't even think about it.
It's true, we don't. And all the stuff we're looking at today really highlights that phytoplankton produce like over half the oxygen we breathe.
Wow.
That's more than all the rainforests combined.
Really puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, they're the foundation of the whole marine food web, right? They feed everything from like the tiny krill to the giant whales.
Right.
And yet most people don't even know they exist.
Yeah, so let's shed some light on these unsung heroes then.
Okay.
So we're talking about phytoplankton, which are mostly single-celled plants, like algae, and they just drift through the ocean.
Right.
They're tiny, but they're like these little powerhouses when it comes to photosynthesis.
Oh, yeah. And that's where their superpowers for saving the climate really kick in.
Right.
Photosynthesis, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the basics are that they take in sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water and turn it into energy to grow and release oxygen as a byproduct.
Yeah, and we have one diagram that actually shows this process like so beautifully.
Okay.
It really highlights how phytoplankton use chlorophyll, just like plants on land, to capture sunlight and turn it into energy.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And what's really fascinating is how this photosynthesis makes phytoplankton like champions of carbon capture.
Oh, wow.
They pull that carbon dioxide right out of the atmosphere, turn it into carbohydrates, and essentially lock it up in their bodies.
So they're like naturally cleaning up our mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And it gets even better.
Okay.
So when they die, some of them sink down to the deep ocean and they take that carbon with them.
Oh, wow.
This is called carbon sequestration. And it removes that carbon from the atmosphere for good.
So it's not just a temporary fix.
No. It's stored in the deep ocean for a very long time, acting as a buffer against climate change.
Okay.
So thanks to phytoplankton, the ocean is this massive carbon sink, absorbing something like 25% of the CO2 that we humans pump out every year.
Think about that, a quarter of our emissions.
Yeah.
These microscopic organisms are really doing some heavy lifting for us.
For sure. And the source material actually emphasizes that the ocean has absorbed so much heat from climate change that it's actually prevented the planet from warming by an additional 1 degree Celsius.
Wow.
So without the ocean and the phytoplankton in it, things would be looking even worse.
That's scary to think about.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
For sure. And it's important to remember it's not just phytoplankton doing all the work.
There's a whole world of other marine microbes down there, breaking down organic matter and releasing nutrients that fuel even more phytoplankton growth.
Right, so it's like this complex ecosystem working together to keep our planet healthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A delicate balance, a symphony of life that we need to protect.
Which brings us to kind of the darker side of this story. Despite their importance, phytoplankton and the ocean ecosystem they support face a lot of serious threats.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
So, for instance, pollution throws off the balance of this ecosystem. All the stuff we dump in there, the fertilizers, plastics, industrial waste,
Yeah, it all disrupts the natural processes that keep things running smoothly.
And overfishing has got to play a role in that too, right?
Absolutely. When you remove too many fish, it messes with the whole food chain.
Yeah.
And that ultimately impacts phytoplankton populations as well. It's like pulling a thread on a sweater. The whole thing can unravel.
And then there's climate change itself.
Oh, right.
It's ironic that the very thing phytoplankton are helping to fix is also harming them.
It is. And one of the most concerning effects is ocean acidification.
Okay.
So as the ocean absorbs more CO2, the water becomes more acidic.
Okay.
And that makes it harder for certain marine organisms to build their shells and skeletons. And that includes some types of phytoplankton.
So they're absorbing carbon to protect the planet, but it's making it harder for them to survive.
It's a tough paradox.
It is. It sounds like we have a responsibility then to protect these tiny heroes that are working so hard to keep us healthy.
We do. There are a lot of things we can do. And it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Understanding how important this ecosystem is and what's threatening it, that's the first step. Then we can start making changes in our own lives.
Like what? Give us some examples. What can our listeners do?
Well, one of the most impactful things is reducing your carbon footprint. Be mindful of how much energy you use your transportation choices. Even your diet, every little bit makes a difference.
Okay, what about supporting sustainable seafood?
That's huge, too. Choosing seafood from sustainable sources can help protect fish populations. And that, in turn, helps the whole marine ecosystem, including phytoplankton.
So it's about making informed choices as consumers and being aware of our impact?
Exactly. And beyond what we do as individuals, we can also advocate for policies that protect our oceans, support marine research, and raise awareness.
So it sounds like we can do a lot, both on our own and together.
We can.
It's not about feeling overwhelmed, but about knowing that even small actions make a difference.
That's right. Every step we take, no matter how small, helps protect this vital ecosystem. And when it comes to something as important as the ocean's carbon sink, every little bit counts. We've been talking about the ocean absorbing a quarter of our CO2 emissions. But the true scale of this whole carbon capture thing is even more amazing.
Okay.
Research shows that the ocean actually holds like 30% of all the carbon on Earth.
30% of all the carbon on Earth? That's wild. It's like this giant planetary vault just locking away carbon that would be wreaking havoc up here.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, while phytoplankton are like the key players in this town, their impact goes way beyond just absorbing carbon directly.
Right.
Their role in the whole ocean ecosystem is what really contributes to this huge carbon storage.
So they're like a keystone species holding the whole carbon cycle together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their existence kicks off this whole chain reaction, influencing everything from like nutrient distribution to the overall health and balance of marine life.
Speaking of balance, you mentioned earlier how climate change is impacting the very organisms that are helping to slow it down. It's kind of a cruel twist of fate, isn't it?
It is. One of the biggest worries is ocean acidification.
Right.
So as the ocean absorbs more and more CO2, the water gets more acidic.
Okay.
And this increased acidity makes it harder for some marine organisms, including certain types of phytoplankton, to build their shells and skeletons.
So the very act of absorbing carbon to protect the planet makes it harder for them to survive?
Yeah, it's a real paradox. And the consequences go beyond just phytoplankton. Ocean acidification is a threat to a whole bunch of marine life. And it has huge implications for us humans, too.
How so?
Well, one of the sources points out that about 1 billion people rely on the ocean for food and their livelihoods.
Wow, 1 billion people. That really puts things in perspective. It's not just an environmental issue, it's a human issue.
Exactly. The health of the ocean is completely tied to our own well-being. We depend on it for food resources, climate regulation, even our cultural heritage.
It's like a wake-up call. We can't keep taking from the ocean without facing the consequences. We need to change our thinking.
I agree. We have to move away from this idea of just taking what we can get and embrace conservation and sustainable management.
So let's talk solutions. We've talked about what we can do as individuals, like reducing our carbon footprint and choosing sustainable seafood.
Right.
But what about on a bigger scale? Are there any promising efforts happening to address this globally?
There are a bunch of exciting developments in carbon sequestration. One area of research is focused on enhancing natural carbon sequestration processes.
So like giving the ocean a boost in its ability to absorb carbon.
Exactly.
How do you even enhance something as vast as the ocean's carbon cycle?
Well, one way is by restoring coastal ecosystems like mangroves and seagrass beds.
Okay.
These ecosystems are incredibly efficient at capturing and storing carbon. They're like natural carbon sinks. But they've been degraded over the years because of human activities.
So if we restore these ecosystems, we could increase the ocean's ability to store carbon.
Exactly. It's a nature-based solution with a ton of benefits, not just for carbon sequestration, but also for biodiversity and coastal protection.
That's amazing. Are there any other innovative approaches being explored?
There are. One that's gotten a lot of attention and some controversy is iron fertilization.
Iron fertilization. I've heard that term, but I'm not sure I understand it. Can you explain?
Sure. In certain parts of the ocean, iron is like a limiting nutrient for phytoplankton growth. So the idea is if you carefully introduce small amounts of iron into these areas, you can stimulate big blooms of phytoplankton.
And then those blooms would absorb more CO2 from the atmosphere?
Exactly. It's a way to kind of artificially boost the ocean's natural carbon-absorbing power. But it's a complex process with potential risks and unintended consequences that we have to think about carefully.
I can imagine messing with the balance of the ocean could have unforeseen effects. There's always that risk with large-scale interventions.
Absolutely. That's why we need thorough research and testing before doing anything like that on a large scale. It's a balancing act between innovation and responsibility.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential for good, but also a lot of caution needed.
You got it. We need to be enthusiastic, but also really respect how complex these systems are.
It's a reminder that when it comes to the ocean, we're not just watching. We're active participants, and our actions have consequences.
I agree. This deep dive has really shown how powerful nature is, but also how our actions affect the planet.
It really has. And it shows how important it is that we all work together, individuals and governments, to protect these vital ecosystems. It's clear that the future of our planet depends on how we understand and care for the ocean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while the challenges seem big, the potential for positive change is huge if we act decisively and work together.
This is a conversation that needs to keep going. We need to keep talking about these issues and inspire action.
Totally. I agree. We've only scratched the surface of this. There's so much more to learn and understand.
Well, stay tuned, everyone, because we'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into the world of phytoplankton and their crucial role in shaping our planet's future. Welcome back to our deep dive into this invisible forest. We've been exploring the fascinating world of phytoplankton, these tiny organisms that are quietly shaping the fate of our planet. You know, we've covered their incredible oxygen-producing power, the threats they face, and even some potential solutions for protecting them and harnessing their carbon-capturing abilities.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it, from the microscopic to the global?
It has.
I mean, we've seen how these seemingly insignificant organisms play such a crucial role in the health of our planet and ultimately in our own survival.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening for sure. And, you know, it strikes me that we've been focusing mainly on phytoplankton's role in, mitigating climate change, but their importance goes way beyond that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You have to remember that they're the foundation of the entire marine food web.
Right.
I mean, these tiny organisms are the primary producers, the base upon which everything else in the ocean ecosystem depends.
So it's not just about carbon sequestration, it's about maintaining the delicate balance of this incredibly complex and diverse ecosystem.
Exactly. Phytoplankton support this vast and interconnected network of life. From the tiniest zooplankton to the largest whales.
Right.
Their health and abundance directly impact the health of the entire ocean, and by extension, our own well-being.
It's easy to forget that connection sometimes, especially when we're so caught up in our daily lives. You know, we don't always see the direct link between the health of the ocean and our own lives.
That's true. But the reality is that our fates are intertwined with the fate of the ocean. What happens to the ocean ultimately happens to us. We depend on it for food resources, climate regulation, even our own mental and physical well-being.
That's a powerful thought. So how do we foster a greater sense of responsibility and stewardship for this vast and vital part of our planet? How do we bridge that disconnect and get people to care about what's happening beneath the waves?
I think it starts with awareness, as we've been discussing.
Right.
Educating ourselves and others about the intricate workings of the ocean ecosystem, the challenges it faces, and the crucial role it plays in our own lives. That knowledge is the foundation for action.
Knowledge is power, as they say. But it can't stop there, can it? We need to move beyond simply knowing and actually start doing.
You're absolutely right. We need to translate that knowledge into tangible action. And that action can take many forms, from making conscious choices in our daily lives to supporting organizations and initiatives that are working to protect the ocean.
So it's about both individual responsibility and collective action. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web of life, and that our actions, no matter how small they may seem, have ripple effects throughout the system.
Precisely. One of the source materials we have actually highlights some specific actions individuals can take. It mentions things like reducing our plastic consumption, supporting sustainable fisheries, and advocating for policies that protect our oceans.
Those are all great examples of things we can do in our daily lives. Even small changes can add up to make a difference.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of simply spreading the word, talking to friends and family about these issues, raising awareness in your community. Sometimes just starting a conversation can be a powerful catalyst for change.
It's about inspiring others to care, to learn, and to act.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being perfect or doing everything all at once. It's about making conscious choices, learning, growing, and inspiring others to do the same. We're all on this journey together.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real journey, from the microscopic world of phytoplankton to the vastness of the ocean and its impact on our planet. We've explored the science, the challenges, and the glimmers of hope.
It has been quite a journey, and it's left me with a renewed sense of awe and wonder at the interconnectedness of it all, and a sense of urgency to protect this incredible ecosystem that sustains us all.
I couldn't agree more. And it's important to remember that there are so many people working tirelessly to protect this incredible ecosystem. Scientists, researchers, activists, policymakers, everyday people making conscious choices in their lives. We're all part of the solution.
Absolutely. And I believe that by working together with both knowledge and compassion, we can ensure a healthy and thriving ocean for generations to come.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, listeners. We hope you've learned something new and perhaps even feel inspired to take action. Remember, even small steps can make a big difference when it comes to protecting our planet's most precious resource, the ocean. And remember, the future of the ocean is in our hands.